Good morning, Tribal Jazzman Scholar. I've been thinking about music and about language, and I wanted to share a possible way to frame this amazing phenomenon of language. If you listen to articulate speech against a rhythm, against a pattern of beats, you'll notice that there's a certain relationship to the given stated pulse that's inherent in the speech, that the person speaking isn't necessarily trying to be a rapper or trying to be connected to a rhythm, but good articulate speech tends to have an underlying pulse. There's a way in which words fall against the beat. I've noticed that in my analysis of books, literature, as I look for things that are going to be appropriate for students. I'm always trying to find something where there's an inherent rhythm in the way it's written, where I don't stumble over an extra couple of beats in a sentence or syllables. And good spoken English, articulate language, English, any language, but that's the one that I'm speaking. Articulate language, articulate speaking, and good solid writing tends to be rhythmic. All right, now what about tonality? Because music is the tonal component and it's the rhythmic. Well, the vowels, as I said in a previous post, the vowels in language, I, E, O, U, even though I said all those vowels, I, E, O, U, the short vowels in English, I said them all in the same tone, fundamental tone. The reason that they're noticeably different is because, well, not just that I change the shape of my face, but I create different intensities in the overtones, which is a little bit of a complicated musical phenomenon, but every fundamental tone has overtones, which are less audible notes that are in exact proportion to the way you might divide up the vocal cord. But these overtones, an octave, a fifth above that, these overtones are consistent for every fundamental tone. What's different, though, is the intensity of those overtones. And they represent in the volume a very, very small percentage of the overall volume. And yet, when I speak, every vowel is a tone, unlike consonants like hat, hat. Those are not tones. The hat, and if I stretch it out, you can hear the tone, even if it's moving. But the fundamental tone has overtones, and the intensities of those determine the vowels. And when I change the shape of my mouth from O to E, I change the resonators and the overtone intensities. I don't do it consciously, but the human brain has to be this amazing music-generating machine that it can deliver language so not only rapidly, but it can do so with constant variations in the overtones of the vowels in order to make sense and be comprehensible. So here we have speaking and spoken word that comes across in a rhythmic way. It relates to an understated pulse. It has a relevance to rhythm and time, and also it's full of tonality. What if language were music, in fact? We think of music as sort of this elaborated form of language in which rhythm and tonality are refined. But what if language itself is a differentiated form of music? An unconscious, perhaps, form. And what if relating in conversation to other people involves, much like a musical ensemble, the appropriate level of listening, empathy, patience, and a rhythmic exchange of opportunities to be speaking. So I don't interrupt, for example. Or if I do, it's musical. It's relevant. The idea that language is musical with its rhythms and tonalities, and that actually we enjoy what we call music because it's a refined expression, communicative expression. These are just ideas and food for thought. I'm reminded of a very intriguing and brilliant French physician named Alfred Tomatis, who was very fascinated with audition, the function of the ear and listening, and he had very unusual, eccentric somewhat, non-conventional theories that he wrote about at length about the human ear and the ability to hear. And he was of the mind that the body, all of the skin of the organism, the Homo sapien body, was a form of differentiated ear, because the ear skin is slightly different than the rest of the body, and most people say that the ear is differentiated skin, but he called the skin differentiated ear because he believed that we heard through the entire body. which might be consistent with the idea that there's a lot more music in the universe than we're giving the universe credit for. The cycles of the seasons, the rhythm of the wind through grass, ripples in the sea, moon cycles. There's so much that has repetition, and that over time could be seen as having almost a uniform musicality to it. We know that indigenous peoples don't see time as linear. They see it as cyclical. There's much to consider. Tribal Jazzman Scholar, thanks for joining me.